So we're live on YouTube. We're not recording yet. So.
Hey, Eric, I don't know if you'd heard that or not, but we are streaming live now. We'll still be, I think, another 4 minutes before we'll kick it off, but we're up and live.
Okay, I'll start a recording, then I'll pass off hosts.
Thank you, Jesse. Casey. Looks like we have about 1 more minute here and we'll get started. We have a few more folks joining us still. What do we think, team? 6 o'clock? Shall we kick off? Yeah. Good. Well, everyone, thank you for joining us tonight. Welcome to our second virtual wolf scoping meeting for Wolf Plan and Environmental Impact Statement. My name is Molly Parks. I am the carnivore coordinator for the state of Montana for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And I thought we'd start off with just a couple quick introductions for our team here to support us this evening. Brian, you want to kick us off?
You bet. My name is Brian Wakeling. I'm the Game Management Bureau Chief, and I'll be kind of keeping track of time tonight and trying to keep us all on track.
Sam?
Hi, guys. I'm Sam. I'm the Wolf Plan Coordinator.
Eric?
Wasn't ready there. Yeah, my name is Eric Merchant, and I am the MIPA coordinator for Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, the Montana Environmental Policy Act.
Thanks, guys. So this evening, we are going to kick off. Sam's going to give us a little bit of background information on the Wolf Plan development process, the scoping process, and then Brian will start taking folks with hands raised for comment. Depending on how many folks join us this evening, we'll kind of gauge how much time we have for each individual comment. So with that, Sam, you want to go ahead and give us a little bit of information?
I sure can. So as you guys know, Governor Gianforte directed the department to develop a new wolf plan to replace the 2003 wolf plan, which was drafted and approved when the wolf was still listed under the Endangered Species Act. The department is initiating scoping for possible alternatives for consideration as we develop this new wolf management plan for Montana. To date, the department has identified two alternatives. The first is a no action alternative and would keep the 2003 wolf plan in place. And while the 2003 wolf plan was developed to provide flexibility in managing the wolf population, since then the population has grown substantially. The original population monitoring metrics and techniques, as well as response to livestock depredations, are, as described in the old plan, outdated and inefficient. So consequently, the department is considering a second alternative. And this alternative would describe population management objectives that were initially adopted as part of the Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission's 2010 season setting process. They would include maintaining a viable and connected wolf population in Montana, maintaining authority for the state of Montana to manage wolves, maintaining sustainable hunter opportunity for wolves and ungulates, increasing broad public acceptance of sustainable harvest and hunter opportunity as part of wolf conservation, enhancing open and effective communication to better inform decisions, maintaining positive and effective working relationships with all stakeholders, providing adaptability to incorporate new research and monitoring methods as they become available. The second alternative, as we just kind of elaborated on, may incorporate strategies that helps us ensure that the balance required for wolf management in Montana is recognized into the future. So this could include spatial differences in levels of wolf mortality to reach the specified population or other management objectives at the statewide scale. So for example, addressing concerns for big game populations or livestock depredation as they vary across the state. Update descriptions to wolf-related science since 2003. As well as perhaps implement citizen working group or committees to obtain continued stakeholder input and review. So we want your help in identifying alternatives that maybe we have not yet captured or concepts that we have overlooked in the existing alternatives. And you can provide input in a number of ways. The first is, of course, tonight. Secondly, you can either send in your comments through snail mail or email, and I'll put the addresses in the chat here at the end of this kind of briefing. And essentially this public scoping period will last 30 days, and will close Saturday, April 22nd, 2023. So this year, towards the end of the month. FWP will consider all applicable input provided during the virtual scoping meetings, as well as all applicable input received or postmarked by Saturday, April 22nd of 2023, when defining the plan and the scope of the EIS. We would like to emphasize that this is not the end of the process, it's just the beginning. We have not drafted a plan yet, and once we have a plan drafted with its associated environmental impact statement, we will be sharing both of those documents for your review and comment. So there will be opportunities for more public input later this summer and fall. So we will now begin the public scoping process for tonight's virtual meeting and open the floor to comments. So please raise your virtual hand and you will be called on one at a time by Brian. Please limit your remarks to the alternatives or aspects that should be considered in the EIS or plan. Keep your comments concise, please, since we do only have 2 hours for this session. And we would like to mention here too, that if you did speak last meeting, you may have another opportunity tonight, but we will prioritize new participants first. And lastly, if you don't get to speak this evening, please feel free to send us your comments, again, up until April 22nd.
Thanks, Sam. Brian, you want to kick us off? It looks like we have a handful of participants that are ready to share their comments.
You bet. What we're going to try to do is give everybody as much of an opportunity to speak as possible. However, we do have 34 people that we have in the queue right now. And so if I start to see that grow, I may have to kind of adjust time. But for this beginning, what I'm going to try to do is give everybody 2.5 minutes to speak. And at the end of that, don't feel, it's not a time game. It's not how much time you can actually spend. It's trying to get your point across. And I recognize that may take a while. So, Mary, I'm going to go to you first. And if there's anybody on the phone, what you need to do is hit *9 to raise your hand. If you're just on your computer, just go ahead and raise your hand and I'll let you talk. So Mary, you're up.
Yes, hello. Thank you for calling on me. Creating a new plan for wolves will do absolutely nothing if the Montana legislature and Montana FWP continue to function the same way in the same closed-door manner. In order for wolves to have a chance at survival, more than trappers and outfitters need to be invited to the table to make decisions. All groups interested in wolf decisions and activity must be uniformly represented, and the very best available science that shows non-lethal means works must be utilized. Thank you for letting me comment.
Thank you, Mary. Appreciate that. Alana, we'll go to you next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
I just want to listen to a couple of comments.
Okay. I'd like us to return to managing wolves as valued native wildlife and as a recovered species, not as vermin, and not simply to keep a remnant population to benefit guided trophy hunts and trappers. Trophy hunters and trappers deserve a voice as stakeholders, but they are a minority in Montana. The majority of Montanans want to see a healthy, well-managed wolf population, and there are more wildlife watchers than hunters. We have great science coming out of places like Yellowstone that help state managers do a great job, but we're not using that science right now. Wolves need to be managed the way cougars are managed. Ask Jay Colby of Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks about his principles in creating a great cougar management plan that has brought the lions back, that allows hunter opportunity, but most of all is managing eco-region by eco-region. What that means, for example, is if in the Bitterroot, elk are struggling a little bit, and we found, by the way, that lions kill 4 times the number of elk that wolves do. And the study finally showed, the FWP study showed, that elk are struggling not because of cougars or wolves, but because of habitat loss. But let's say you have habitat loss in the Bitterroot, then you can increase the number of cougars or wolves that you kill in that region for a little while to give elk a break. That's how cougars are managed. That's not how wolves are managed. Stakeholders, the largest economic stakeholder in regard to wolves is tourism, the second largest industry in the state. Why are hunters the only named stakeholders? They're a minority, and trophy hunters even smaller. Ranchers are also stakeholders since ranching, but they only lose on average 60 livestock a year to wolves. So ranching is not a great risk if there's a robust wolf population. Elk are not at risk because of wolves. We're at over-objective in the state. Wolves manage elk better than humans. In Yellowstone Park, we have a balanced cow-bull ratio. We do not outside the park because human hunters choose which elk to kill differently than wolves do. Wolf tourism brings in 136 million just into the greater Yellowstone area. So wolves in Southwest Montana and near Glacier need to be protected. If you manage ecoregion by ecoregion, then in these regions, you would have a 0 or a 1 quota, very low quota, which is what we should be returning to. Killing wolves is not the best management tool, and it should not be our first management tool.
Alana, thank you for your input. You've used your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Allison, you are next.
Hello?
Hello, Allison. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dr. Allison Dahlman. The vast majority of Montanans are non-consumptive and don't want wolves killed, yet they're not represented by the current wolf killing regulations. The solution? To build a collaborative, including advocates, hunters, tourism representatives, scientists, and landowners, to work together, creating solutions which represent best current science and are transparent. This group should be led by an independent facilitator with access to all current research and data. These are public lands, and the majority want and deserve clarity around trapping, hunting, and wolf killing. FWP pushes regulations preventing such transparency. Elk, deer, and bears have working groups. Wolves need one too. Current peer-reviewed data show that non-lethal methods are more efficacious and cost-effective than lethal methods. And PRA funds, in quotes, the Wildlife Restoration Section 4B, to be specific, should be used to pay for non-lethal methods and education. License plates could also be used, as in Colorado. Livestock owners should be reimbursed only when using non-lethal tools. Otherwise, they have no incentive, and wolves, the ecosystem, ecotourism, and the public all suffer. Stop killing wolves until an accurate counting system can replace the inaccurate, unscientific IPOM. And I know groups who will help finance these counts. An actual count is essential before any recommendation should be made, and no aerial gunning of wolves should ever take place. I will email a complete plan. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and have a good evening.
Thank you, Allison. I will now go to Alicia. Alicia, if you-
Hi, thank you.
Go
My
ahead.
name is Dr. Alicia Main. I spent a lot of time with wolves and work with wolf dogs. I lived in Montana for 9 months and was basically shocked at what I was seeing in terms of the level of hatred and anger and resentment towards animals that actually help balance out the ecosystem. I observed a lot of hatred coming from hunters and coming from ranchers. Ranchers especially blew me away because they talk about wolves killing their animals when ranchers are some of the biggest killers of cows on the planet. So there's not really a comparison there. The other piece is that how could you possibly present science when you are using your own scientists and you don't have any independent science that you're willing to look at? It's got to be a balanced system. If you're going to base things on actual science, I really would appreciate if you could call in independent scientists that can evaluate the numbers of wolves, the number of damage, the number of deer and elk population that are supposedly diminished by the wolves when it's been proven that wolves kill only 20% of what they go after. The other thing is that when you look at Montana as a whole, it's a huge space. And there's the possibility that ranchers and people that are really against wolves could easily take measures that would keep their livestock more protected, that would be a much less lethal way of finding a balance and striking a balance between the animals that God's left on the land and those that we've brought here to roam around to make profit from. And lastly, in terms of this situation, we actually have to start to see it as a political situation. There is no independent groups that are allowed in. So what's happening is the Good Old Boys Network is being continually and financially propagated. But if you are actually on a political level, if you are beholden to your constituents, then you've got to stop listening to just the top level constituents that are paying you extra money and lobbying to kill wolves versus the people that actually inhabit Montana. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments, Alicia. We will go to Micah. If you go ahead and you may begin to speak.
Hello there. Thank you for the opportunity to provide input on this plan. My name is Mika Coster-Roos and I live in the town of Sealy Lake. I will be submitting more detailed suggestions via email. However, today I'd like to say I believe transparency is key, not only for wolf management, but also for the development of a new wolf conservation and management plan. Fish, Wildlife, and Parks mentions the updated Montana Gray Wolf Conservation and Management Plan will include better transparency on wolf management. And yet FWP recently significantly minimized transparency, for example, by doing away with nearly all wolf management units and using trapping districts instead of WMUs. That's the opposite of transparency. An organization that is above board and has nothing to hide isn't afraid of transparency, and not only suggests they want to improve transparency, they demonstrate ongoing transparency. Currently, wolf management in the state of Montana caters to a hunter's opportunity to be part of wolf conservation. A prudent way for FWP to demonstrate true transparency and acceptance of those who prefer to experience living wolves would be to work with an effective wolf advisory committee consisting of as many types of relevant stakeholders as possible, and actively using input from the advisory committee to put together the wolf management plan. This would also demonstrate the effectiveness and sincere use of public scoping instead of just having these sessions as a formality. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your input, Mika. We will go to Michelle.
Hello.
Good evening.
Thanks for letting me speak. Wolves are not just predators to be managed, but an essential part of our ecosystems in Montana. And the presence of wolves in Yellowstone has generated tens of millions of dollars annually for local businesses and communities through wildlife tourism. As a gardener local myself, my own career and family are supported by bringing tourists to see the wolves. And we get busier every single year through COVID, through the economic downturns. I'd like to see the new wolf plan take ecotourism into account and plan for areas with zero wolf harvest to protect this burgeoning industry, especially in the hunting units directly adjacent to Yellowstone National Park. We must recognize the intrinsic value of wolves, not just as a trophy to be hung on a wall, but as a key driver of ecotourism. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments. We will move to Kelly Michaels, you're up next.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
My name is Callie Michaels. I represent the Montana Wool Growers Association. As you're looking at alternatives for the wolf management plan, I think it's important to consider a wide spectrum of alternatives because that's where the ideas and the creativity arise. So even if alternatives are not ultimately something that is feasible or will not meet the objectives, it's important to assess them for purposes of getting information and coming up with solutions. So on that spectrum, I see on one end, no management, in which wolves would be treated like coyotes and other non-protected species. Obviously, there's ESA implications with that, but again, I think it's important to address the whole spectrum. On the other end of the spectrum, you have non-lethal, non-interference, where it's basically the opposite. You're looking for growth, as little interference as possible. And then in the middle, I'd like to see variations on minimal protection, where you have a baseline population, perhaps variations looking at regional, looking at statewide, a stair-step system, where if you've met certain population thresholds, You can have predator control by agency, next threshold, predator control by landowners, next threshold, then you're into hunting, trapping. I think all of those are aspects that should be explored through different alternatives, as well as looking at different ways in which lethal control and non-lethal should be incorporated into the alternatives. Aspects to consider in the different alternatives. I think it's important to consider the loss of revenue if wolf hunting is removed. Revenue from wolf licenses funds a great deal of wolf conservation and management. So I think that's an important consideration. The availability of lethal and non-lethal methods on private versus public land, the cost of non-lethal efforts, the cost to livestock producers of livestock deaths, injury, stress on animals from harassment by wolves, and the cost of non-lethal efforts, which is a big expense for livestock producers. We'd also like to see consideration for, and I'll wrap this up, ecotourism and environmental groups that are pro-wolf funding non-lethal efforts. I realize that's something that would have to come through the legislature, but that is an aspect we'd like to see. I have some others, but I realize my time is likely up, so I'll conclude there.
Thank you, Kelly. We will now go to Chris. Chris, you're up.
Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk on this topic. My name is Chris Morgan. I'm the Vice President of the Montana Trappers Association. As a whole, we are pro-management. We're not anti-wolf. We're not pro-wolf. We do believe that this is a very outdated plan, and we're glad that we're looking at updating it. We do definitely believe that FWP has the best interest of all stakeholders in this, and that you will use the best scientific-based information to look at moving forward this. That being said, as old as this plan is, we'd like to see it come into effect as soon as possible. And therefore, we don't feel a citizens advisory committee is in the best interest of this plan. Rarely are they productive. I've been a member of numerous chats on them and trying to figure out all the different issues we face in the state. And it never seems like anyone can ever come to a conclusion that basically helps everybody. No groups will ever feel equally represented. That's just how it boils down to it. There's always concern about that. They really are only going to delay the plan, like I said, even further, which we feel that it needs to be updated ASAP. In alternative 2, it does say hunter opportunity. We'd like to make sure that it does say trapper opportunity as well. Without trapping, we will be nowhere near what our management goals are. The goal for wolf reintroduction never was to have as many wolves on the landscape as possible. I believe that IPOM is working accurately, and it is backed by a lot of the science and a lot of the boots on the ground work that Idaho is working on right now. It reflects that our population counts are very similar to theirs, and they have thousands of cell cameras out doing taking actual photos and census of wolf populations, and it basically just goes right along with what IPOM is telling us as far as densities go. Montana Code Annotated 87.1217 Section C says that the policy for management of large predators is to preserve citizens' opportunities for harvesting big game. Keyword there being opportunity. We like to talk a lot about the elk counts and how they're over objective. What we don't realize, or what a lot of people don't realize, is that when we do those counts, those elk are rarely in the same hunting units that they are come hunting season. It's widely known that our elk are migratory, and a lot of them spend a lot of time on private property. So as far as hunter opportunity goes, it definitely has been diminished. Even though our elk counts are above objective, they shouldn't be utilized for hunter opportunity, more so just a idea of what the state is currently holding. Lastly, I'd like to talk about the statement that has been made last working session was on CWD, how wolves control CWD. There have been multiple studies now that prove that wolves do not stop the spread of CWD. They've shown that prions can and do survive intestinal tracts of predators and corvids. Therefore, I don't think that that should be anything that we need to talk about going forward.
Okay.
I do believe,
Chris,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to have to interrupt you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Next, we will go to Jeff.
Great. Good evening.
Good evening, Jeff.
I'm Jeff Dara from the Bitterroot. These are my opinions and my thoughts, but I really don't think the updating of the wolf plan is meant to be a discussion about relisting the wolf. The wolf's recovered, and FWP's done a great job managing the wolves for 12 years. And allowing for public input at the FWP commission level, I feel is adequate and effective and works. I ask that this planning process not be prolonged or extended. I don't know if that can be avoided with the MIPA process, but it's the strategy of groups that don't want any wolf hunting or trapping to delay and litigate. We're involved in a lawsuit right now. I don't support forming a wolf advisory committee. This will add a layer of bureaucracy that's not needed and will only cause for arguments that have already occurred. In my opinion, it's a step backwards in Montana's wolf management. The Northern Rocky Mountain distinct population segment, the management objective was 1,100 wolves in 5 states. Currently, we're at 3,400 wolves approximately in those 5 states. As a sportsman, it's my concern that even with liberal laws and seasons, we're not harvesting the allowed quotas, meaning that wolf numbers are increasing each year. This plays a damaging impact on ungulate populations. And as a sportsman that likes to hunt elk and deer, I think this is unacceptable and we need to manage wolves. Thank you for the opportunity to talk.
Thank you, Jeff. We will go to Jim. Jim, we'll go ahead and you unmute, you're free to speak.
Good evening, Brian. Jim Bell. In the introduction to the scoping process, you state the 2023 Wolf Conservation Management Plan will include the latest science surrounding wolf management. One significant scientific breakthrough that has occurred since the last wolf plan was in place is that we now know the gray wolf is a keystone species that has enormous ecological benefits. The wolf can be instrumental in restoring a denuded, overgrazed ecosystem. This process was meticulously documented in Yellowstone National Park with multiple studies that were completed after the Montana 2003 Wolf Plan was created. Because of these studies, we also now understand the ecological phenomenon known as trophic cascade. These scientific achievements should be incorporated in a 2023 Wolf Conservation and Management Plan. An additional alternate plan could also be created around these principles. A second point I would like to reiterate is the need for a Citizens Advisory Council. This should comply with the Montana Public Trust Doctrine and should manage the state wolves for the benefit of the public as a whole. To do this correctly, wildlife advocates, non-consumptive users, and Native Americans must have equal representation with the other stakeholders. Thank you for taking the time to consider my comments.
Thank you for taking the time to share them. We will go to Glenda.
Good morning, or good morning, good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time. When is the last time you've been in Montana's national parks and watched people from all over the world come to this state just to get a chance or even hear a wolf? You must consider how much more valuable a wolf is alive than dead. A new white wolf advisory board should be equally divided among all stakeholders. With a balanced committee, alternatives to today's deadly and overreaching mismanagement can be considered. The deck should not be stacked and only benefit those that profit from dead wolves. To be fair and transparent, it should be independently managed, much like a divorce mediator. This would allow all sides to be treated fairly. Non-lethal management should be prioritized. The extremely lethal tools used the last few years should at least be shelved. Wolves can coexist with ranchers and farmers and hunters. With a balanced committee, these options can be brought forward and proven out in the field. The newest and best science should be used as a basis for all decisions. Everyone knows the IPOM method is flawed and not scientific. Asking hunters if they've seen any wolves is probably a little skewed. No other species is counted this way. FWP should provide the public with all pertinent information regarding wolf counts and the method used. Wolf deaths, including where, when, and how. Bring back the map to discourage and punish poachers and keep hunters honest. Any wolf management plan should be flexible and open to revision as data changes. There is so much info out there right now. It should be easy to develop a modern management plan that reflects the majority of Montanans who want wolves on the landscape and keep unethical hunters and trappers in check. No longer should it be allowed that the small fraction of a minority contingent should write the rules to only benefit themselves and the people they financially support. Thank you so much for listening to all of us.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Nick, you're up.
Hi, Brian. Thank you for taking my call. I would like to see in this newest management plan strong consideration given to recent research over the last few years that show that depending on what individual wolf in a certain pack is killed, that could affect the overall welfare of every other individual in that pack. And also depending on their
people can see it and think it's old.
Okay.
So I'm basically taking out copy of, and I'm putting sittings underscore.
Excuse me. Yes, if, as I was saying, depending on which individual wolf is killed, say a dominant breeder, the other younger wolves, if close to a livestock production, that could give that could be detrimental for the livestock producers. So I would like to see in the new plan that body of research given strong consideration. So thank you.
Thank you, Nick. We will move to Stephanie. Stephanie, you're up.
Hello. I just have a few suggestions. So first one I think would be very beneficial would be a creation of a wolf advisory committee. And this would be fair for all the stakeholders involved. It needs to be made up of people that take part on our public lands that are from all different groups. And these can include, landowners, hunters, trappers, biologists, advocates, photographers, tourism operators, business owners, etc. There needs to be equal representation of all these groups. And I think this will be the only way the plan will be fair and represent all of us that care for wolves in our state. Transparency is very important. There are a lot of people recreating on our public lands more than ever, and they're also bringing their pets. Public safety is of utmost concern. Most public land users have a right to know what is happening to wolves on public lands and where traps and snares are placed, also where wolves are being killed. And lastly, there should be a section for non-lethal management. Livestock owners should be required to use non-lethal means in order to receive payment for losses. This will be an incentive to use non-lethal methods. And in order for this to happen, the plan needs to have a non-lethal management education available for them to use. So ranchers can be successful, and they need guidance so they can be proactive and employ these tools. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. We will move to Nani. You are up.
Hi, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to speak. A livestock producer certainly has a right to protect their livelihood, but the idea of wolf hunting as an effective first-line method of wolf management is simply not scientifically sound. There are proven methods of non-lethal conflict resolution that need to be utilized first. Wolf hunting should be a last resort, not the current default. And there is absolutely no justification for Montana's unethical and extreme wolf hunting, including inhumane snares and traps. It is unconscionable and it must be stopped. In the name of my rescue pup, Indiana, who was collateral damage in the war on wolves and lost her leg after being shot for a wolf, I implore you to implement a new wolf management plan based on scientific evidence and the recommendations of all the groups that support the conservation of wolves. Please create a wolf advisory committee comprised of all stakeholders with proportionally equal representation. Please be transparent and ensure an independent facilitator helps guide the wolf advisory group. Please ensure that you are using the most up-to-date and the very best available science in making your new wolf management plan. The wolf advisory group needs to be based on a collaborative format where every stakeholder's voice is heard. Please provide access to past historical wolf management information, and please do an accurate and updated accounting of how many wolves actually remain in Montana. Wolves should be revered and respected as a majestic symbol of American wildlife, not hated and hunted. Please do not silence the call of the wild. Thank you.
Thank you, Nani. Okay. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken yet that would like to share their thoughts on ways, aspects of our current scoping that we have either didn't capture, a alternative for the scoping that we haven't thought of, or something with our existing ones that we hadn't, that needs to be added. Please raise your hand. We do have a little bit more time left. And we'll go to those who have not spoken first. Dagmar, you've got your hand up. We'll go to you.
Yes, hi, my name is Dagmar Riddle, and I have a degree in environmental management and restoration technology and a certificate in fish and wildlife law enforcement. And I haven't heard any suggestions yet about maybe returning to the thoughts of doing a wolf step that was brought to Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks years ago, and use this wolf step money to help with non-lethal management. It's just one aspect of getting money to use the best available science to manage wolves. And also, I would like to say that the minimum wolf number that so many people that are against wolves to have as a total wolf population is unrealistic, and wolves can't survive on having just 500 wolves in the state, and this is the fourth biggest state. I mean, there's so much wide open land. You know, there's room for wolves, and they should be ethically and conservationally managed. They should be an asset, and actually when it comes down to reality, the wolves and all the wildlife do not belong to the states. They do not belong to Montana, and Montana is mandated to manage them in the public trust. So that means all people in the whole country have a stake with having a healthy wolf population. And I would like to see the best available science used. I would like to see a return to the weekly wolf reports in like a biweekly or monthly manner that tells what is going on with the wolves, what is happening to them, and what they're doing. It was very informative, and I would like to have a lot more transparency that is now being used. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dagmar. Is there anybody else who has not yet spoken that would like to share some thoughts with us this evening? Please raise your hand if you. Charlotte, we'll give you the floor.
Hi, thank you very much. This is Charlotte Shrupsher. I joined late. I haven't had a chance to write out my comments, but I echo the comments of the previous people just right before me, the last three or so, that I would really like to see wolves treated more ethically, and that they're a huge asset to not only the state, but also the country. And that really, it's not up to the state of Montana to make decisions for the country on how these animals are managed, and that they really are an asset to all of us. And I really would like to see more humane methods used and non-lethal methods used in treating of them, and more scientific, up-to-date research being used. I won't go into continuous detail because I'm echoing this, the same comments that have been said, but I feel like I keep logging into these meetings in support of wolves, and I feel like I hear that from many of the people, and yet nothing ever changes. It doesn't feel like anybody's ever listening that's in charge, which is unfortunate, that there doesn't seem to be an equal representation of all the stakeholders at the table. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anybody else who has not yet spoken? KB.
Yes, hi. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am not a resident of Montana, although I was just there with 10 other very enthusiastic people to see the wolves. We spent quite a lot of money in Gardner, Montana, and in the park with one of the businesses that makes their living off of showing us the wildlife there. I've logged into a number of these meetings, and I would just like to see that wolf management in Montana move towards a more equal and scientifically based discussion about how to manage these wolves and how to keep them in the public trust for future generations. We put these animals back on the landscape for a good reason, and I think science coming out of Yellowstone has proven that these animals are very, very beneficial to our environment and to the balance. And so it would be wonderful if we could have a collaborative working group like you have for other animals on your landscape, that we are represented on all facets, not just trappers, hunters, and people who pay for licenses, but people like myself who actually do contribute quite a bit to the local finances and to the state tourism. These animals are beneficial in so many ways to the people of Montana, to the United States, and to our environment. I'd also like to see a lot more transparency. There's a bill on the floor currently in the House or Senate of Montana talking about limiting that kind of information that's being given out. If these activities like trapping and hunting are taking place on public lands, we all pay for those, and we should all have access to the kinds of things that are happening there, the animals that are being taken. So I appreciate your time, and I want to keep coming to Montana to see these wolves. I want to have them on the landscape, and I hope my children and grandchildren have the same opportunity. I hope you have a good evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, Katie. Carrie, we will go to you.
Thank you. My name is Carrie Gunderson, and I live in the Swan Valley, and I'm a third generation Montanan. And Highway 83 runs through the Swan Valley, and there are more deer hit on Highway 83 than are taken during hunting season. Just this afternoon, when I was driving home from the post office on Highway 83, there was one bull elk in the middle of the highway with a large herd in the woods hoping to make it alive while crossing Highway 83. And there are more elk now in the Swan Valley than I've ever seen in the 40 plus years that I have lived here. And wolves are not eating all of the elk. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carrie. Brooke, we'll go to you.
Hi, thanks. My name's Brooke Schifrin. I am the Wildlife Conservation Coordinator for Greater Yellowstone Coalition, and I'm based out of Bozeman, Montana. We really appreciate the opportunity for input into this process. And I just wanted to flag a few things real briefly, and we'll follow up with some written comments on the scoping period. But in terms of a new management plan, we'd really like to see one that addresses current concerns around the constraints of current wolf monitoring methods. We'd also like to see a plan that recognizes that wolf management strategies need to be tailored to geography, and one also that provides opportunity for ongoing stakeholder input and involvement. And from our perspective, it's critical that that include the community of stakeholders that really relies heavily on wolves being alive on the landscape. And then most importantly, we'd love to see a plan that is really truly reflective of the best available science. In terms of the EIS, I wanted to flag a couple things. The first being that Montana state law allows for methods of wolf take that have the potential to negatively impact grizzly bears. And the Montana Fish and Wildlife Commission's efforts to apply constraints to the application of such methods is really indicative of the agency's recognition of this concern. And the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service recently mentioned these concerns regarding wolf management activities in a letter to Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks Director about weaknesses in state regulatory mechanisms for sustainably managing grizzly bears in the event they are delisted. And so we'd really like to see FWP analyze the impacts of a revised gray wolf conservation and management plan and the accompanying strategies therein on grizzly bears through the EIS. And then we'd also like to see that the impacts of proposed wolf management strategies on wildlife tourism oriented businesses are considered in the EIS. And then we'll also be looking for some indication of meaningful tribal engagement through this process. Thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brooke. Michelle, go to you.
Thank you. I'm Michelle Lute. I'm the Carnivore Conservation Manager for Project Coyote, speaking on behalf of both the organization and our Montana members. Probably I'll keep it brief because I'm just going to echo what other folks have said, but we really want to make sure that the best available science and the full suite of science is being considered in this next phase. And that includes a lot of research coming out of Dr. Adrienne Trevis's lab, indicating that more liberalized legal killing methods encourage also illegal killing. That in combination with some questionable modeling around IPOM creates a lot of uncertainty that could jeopardize the wolf population and the ability to keep it off the endangered species list. So we think that's really important to consider. And we also really want to emphasize that public participation is going to be super important. It's always super important, but it's especially important for the longevity of decisions so that we're not continually going back and forth on these decisions, as it's sometimes referred to as the predator pendulum. So to avoid that pendulum swing of different policy pathways for wolves, participation and ensuring that all voices are heard in this process that's democratic, just, and inclusive is really important. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kim, go ahead and you have an opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Brian. I appreciate you very much. My name is Kim Bean with Wolves of the Rockies. Earlier, Sam, you had mentioned stakeholders. I would love a list of who stakeholders are, because what I hear when you speak of stakeholders, I hear landowners, hunters. That's what I hear. So I'd love to know who stakeholders are when you speak of that, because I would love to hear all land users. That means the non-consumptive land user as well, because we all have a stake in this. So that is a really important thing that we need to be looking at. I also heard, I believe it was Dagmar Riddle. Thank you, Dagmar, for bringing up the weekly wolf reports. Those were a vital part of transparency from FWP that we used to have. They were incredible. And I really would love to see that come back. If FWP is serious about transparency, if FWP is serious about bringing back transparency. I'm going to continue to say transparency. Those are your words. So please bring back the weekly wolf reports. That's important. 8,000 hunters. Come on. That is not a way to count wolves. We do need an actual foot count. We need to get back on the ground. And Wolves of the Rockies is willing to help foot the bill to put people on the ground to count wolves every few years, if that's what we need to do, but we need an actual count. It will help, once again, with transparency. It will help for us to know how many wolves are actually on the ground. And I think that everybody should be okay with that. When I hear other folks out there saying, we don't need a count, we're fine with it, I think that's fear of knowing what's actually on the ground. That's a really important thing. I'd love to come by. Actually, Mark will probably stop by and see Sam tomorrow, if that's all right. We'd love to do that and have a conversation. Kelly spoke about livestock predation and having advocates and advocacy groups paying for livestock issues. My suggestion is, once again, we've got payments. The Livestock Loss Board has money out there. There's money that goes forward for livestock issues. My suggestion will continue to be, if livestock owners, livestock producers are utilizing non-lethal measures and tools to protect your livestock, we're here to help. But if you're not, then, like any other business, you're not doing your part to protect. You know, I think that kind of goes for what it says, but we're here to help if you need it. So, but anyway, those are once again our 2 cents there. We got to stop with the aerial hunting. This is not going to be a part of management. That's just ridiculous. That's mowing animals down. It's not
Kim.
management. Thank you very
Kim,
much, Brian.
thank
I
you.
appreciate you. All right. Take care, man.
Thanks so much. I'm gonna go to John.
Hi, thank you for having me. My name is John Marshwick. I'm currently out of state for college majoring wildlife management, but I'm originally from Montana. One aspect that I feel as though is important to incorporate with this public wolf scoping is having a wolf advisory committee and a wolf advisory group that's collaborative from people of all different backgrounds. Wildlife agencies such as California Department of Fish and Wildlife, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, states with less wolves than Montana has allegedly, all have wolf advisory groups and wolf advisory committees, and there's no reason why Montana should not have a wolf advisory committee for an animal such as with wolves, and there should be an independent facilitator managing the wolf advisory group, just so that, you know, in case something happens, there's someone there ready to stand by. And this wolf advisory committee and group should incorporate people from all different perspectives of all different backgrounds, not just from one perspective. And I also believe that with Montana counting wolves, it should not be with the IPOM method. I feel as though that Montana Fish, Wildlife, and Parks should be counting wolves based off of the minimum wolf counts that a lot of state wildlife agencies use to count wolves, such as Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, to name a few. They all do minimum counts with counting their wolf populations. And my understanding is the IPOM method of counting wolves in Montana has been called into question. So that's something I feel as though should be incorporated in wolf management in Montana, is going back to minimum counts instead of IPOMs. And lastly, I would appreciate also if we have knowledge and information to what is happening on Montana's public lands, because those lands belong to everyone. And I feel as though whatever is happening on public land should be easily available and accessible to public information. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Anybody else like an opportunity to speak? Ryan, you may go ahead.
Hi, my name is Ryan Wilbur, and I'm with People and Carnivores. And I just want to say thank you for having these sessions. Regarding new management plans, we ask that you provide, promote, and detail a robust non-lethal conflict prevention plan that includes a plethora of tools such as flattery, livestock guardian dogs, scare devices, carcass removal, etc. We would be happy to collaborate and work with you to discuss opportunities to be innovative in current and future tools to mitigate conflict. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Anybody else who would like to share a comment? I know there are a number of people that would like to weigh back in again, but I'm looking for new comments, and it certainly don't want to ignore you, but please write your comments down and send it in. If we start going back to everybody at this point, we're over halfway, and we'll run out of time and can't give everybody an opportunity. So I'm not going to go back to people who have already spoken, but if there's someone who has not yet spoken and would like a chance to add something, Cassandra, I see your hands up. I'm going to go ahead and allow you. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Cassandra Reidig. I'm from Houston, Montana, and I basically had two comments. I haven't heard anything more on the localized level. In an area like where I live, there are wolf packs and they are not depredating on local livestock. And I don't think that they should be removed. I don't know why we can't issue wolf tags via a lottery system like we do with moose, and that number to be determined by scientists as to what the wolf population can sustain and be actually healthy and genetically diverse. I think the recipients of such hunting tags could go to areas where there are livestock conflicts occurring and maybe help mitigate some of the damage. I suggest this because wolves in our valley have, they've helped us out quite a bit. They keep the elk and deer out of my hay yard. They keep them out of the pastures and hayfields. And I think it saves us money when they're here. In the last couple of years, we haven't had them. The damage hunts are good, but they don't help long term. The elk just come back after the hunters are gone. We had wolves disperse into our valley over 30 years ago, and I think we had a couple of incidents early on. And since then, they've left my neighbors' livestock alone, ours. And I'm afraid that if we remove packs, or we might get bad ones in their place. And my second point is, I'm concerned that if we break up these packs too much, killing pack members, the tendency of the rest of the pack will be depredating on wildlife, on livestock, and causing issues with my neighbors. And I think we need to prioritize and not make lethal control the primary means to control the wolves in the valley, especially considering the loss of species diversity. And I think we need to do that for our children. So that's basically what I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else have anything to share who has not yet spoken? I'm not seeing any new hands. So if you've had an opportunity to speak, and like I said before, I won't be coming back to you. Please feel free to write your comments down, get on our website, find that link it's at the bottom of the first page, and go ahead and same place that this was listed, submit any additional comments you might have there. Molly, I'm going to go back to you for a wrap up.
Great. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you everyone for the comments this evening. We had a lot of great comments. We really appreciate all of the feedback and input. We will be continuing to take those written comments through April 22nd, as Sam mentioned. Anything postmarked by that date will be considered in this part of the process. We will then begin to draft our alternatives and work on that environmental impact statement. And we're looking sometime late summer, early fall for the draft to potentially come out, where we'll be looking for comment again on the draft. So we just really appreciate everyone taking the time to come out this evening, and we will look forward to the rest of the comments in the mail and email. Thank you.
Good evening.